Redshift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. You should go to kitco.com or monix.com or some other website and check the price of silver. The price of silver a couple days ago was ridiculously low. I think it was Monday. The price of silver was around $14.75 an ounce. I don't know when I'll release this video, probably sometime this week. I think it was Monday, March the 16th, that the price of silver was around $14.75 an ounce. That is preposterously low. And if you don't want to go by price or by how long ago that was the normal price of silver, I think it was about 4 to 5 years ago when that was typically the normal price of silver. It's been a lot higher lately since then. Well, I mean, not a lot higher, but it's fairly higher, $16 to $17 an ounce. Then you can more accurately instead go by the silver to gold ratio. Or is it the gold to silver ratio or the gold silver ratio? Can't remember what it's called. There's like two ratios and they've got very similar names, but they're two totally different ratios. They're two totally different things. But I'm talking about the one where you find the price of gold and then you divide it by the price of silver, right? To see what the price is of each of those, like how related the prices are or whatever. The higher the ratio is, that is, the more pieces, the more ounces of silver you can buy with 1 ounce of gold, the better of a deal silver is, or the worse of a deal gold is. But considering gold is undervalued, not overvalued, this means that the higher this ratio is, the better of a deal that silver is. So when you can literally, like now, buy 102 ounces of silver for 1 ounce of gold, this means that silver is an insanely good deal. It is super cheap right now. If you were planning on buying silver in the next 12 months, I recommend buying now because I can pretty much guarantee that the price of silver is not going to go much lower and will probably not be this low for very long and will probably go significantly higher within the next 5 to 10 years. Platinum is also insanely cheap right now. Platinum is as rare as gold in the Earth's crust, and platinum is only mined at something like 200 to 300 tons per year, whereas gold is mined at 3,000 tons per year. So there's like 1/10 or less platinum mined every year compared to gold, even though it is as common as gold in the Earth's crust. And yet, the price is like $700, 700 some dollars for platinum right now. Historically speaking, platinum's price has usually been higher than the price of gold. And yet for quite a while now, especially right now, platinum's price has been lower than the price of gold. And right now, platinum's price is about half the price of gold. That is insane. That is like unthinkably low. That is such a good deal. I'm not saying that like silver or platinum's price will go up anytime soon. It might be years, maybe even decades before their prices go up a lot. But they never go to zero. Precious metals never go to zero. They never lose all their value, unlike stocks and bonds. And they always, on average, over a long period of time, go up as much as inflation. And they actually go up more than inflation over a long period of time because world population always increases, and thus the fair amount of metal that you could spread out if, like, you took all the above ground silver or all the above ground gold and gave everybody an equal amount, that amount gets smaller and smaller and smaller because the population increasing, especially since there's less and less metal left in the ground. And to take even the same amount of metal, or much less more metal out of the ground every year, you got to do way more effort, sift through way more dirt, because the deposits get thinner and thinner and thinner, and so it costs more and more and more money to take it out of the ground. And so the gold actually goes up in value, even more than inflation over time, both because it's getting more rare, and I think because it's getting more rare, and so the cost to get more out of the ground costs more, and also because world population is increasing. And there's a built-in floor when it comes to the price of precious metals, and that's the mining and refining cost. Precious metals can never drop below the mining price, at least not for long. So if you buy a precious metal when it's near mining cost, like slightly above mining cost, and when it's insanely undervalued, like silver is now, especially compared to historical averages and how much is mined and how much is expected to be used in industrial applications in the future, well then you're almost guaranteeing that the worst thing that will happen is that the precious metal will stay at the price that you bought it at, and when you sell it, you'll lose a little bit of money to having paid a premium above the spot price, which you always have to do, and losing a little more money to the coin shop buying it back at spot or a little less than spot. In other words, losing only a little money is the worst thing that can happen if you buy at the right time, like now, when you buy silver, when it's probably never going to be this low again. Or it's definitely never going to be much lower than this. I mean, I really cannot imagine silver going down to $12 an ounce again. I mean, $12 an ounce would be, I think, below mining cost. I think $13 or $13.50 or maybe $14 an ounce, something like that, is the mining cost. So, like, it's never going back down to $12 an ounce unless it's like a short, like it just skyrockets down for like a minute or an hour or whatever, a very short period of time, and then it bounces right back. It's never going to go down to 12 and stay there for weeks or months. Never. So like, the price, there's a floor there. So if you buy really, really low, like roughly at mining cost, maybe slightly above mining cost, the most you could ever lose is the little bit you lose the premium when you buy it, and then the bit you lose more when you resell it. And they either buy it only for spot, which is less than you bought it for, or they rebuy it for a little less than spot. So spot is the price at which the silver is listed, on like, Monex or Kitco or whatever. It's the official price, even though you have to buy it at more than that because the coin shop or whatever has to make a profit, So that's what spot price is. So yeah, it really is the case that like, you are very, very safe if you buy precious metals, especially if you're planning on holding them for, 10 or 20 years or something. Let's see here, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, losing a little money is the worst thing that can happen if you buy at the right time. But if you buy low and hold it for a long time, 20, 30, 40 years, then you're pretty much guaranteed that it will go up a lot. Inflation plus a bit more, especially if we're talking about gold instead of silver. Although silver's future is brighter in my opinion, although historically gold is much more reliable about going up in price than silver is, because the rich people are always buying gold, not silver. But silver is a great investment because it's used in, I think, over 10,000 industrial applications. Its uses are just, there's so many uses for it, it's crazy. And a lot of those uses destroy the silver, so it gets rarer and rarer. We destroy like so much silver every year. Like, I can't remember how much it is, but I think it's like a huge percentage of how much is mined every year is destroyed. So, and there's actually, I think, a greater demand than there is actually amount of silver being mined every year. So, like, I think the only reason the demand is being met is because of, the U.S. selling those thousands of tons from, the 80,000 tons they used to have that they used to make the magnets in the first atomic bomb, to make the first atomic bombs. They're still selling that into the market at like 2,000 tons a year. So if it weren't for that, there wouldn't even be enough silver being mined, and then the price would have to go up to make uneconomical mines economical again, so that they can mine more silver every year. And to do that, to make those mines economical, the price would have to go up. So, without those 2,000 tons being poured into the market, the price of silver would have to go up. Plus, like I said, it's getting destroyed, and there's going to be more and more use of it going forward. It's used in computers, it's the most reflective metal, and it's thus used in solar panels, which there'll be a big use for silver in the future as solar panels become more and more prevalent. It's the most electrically conductive metal, that's why they use it in computers. It's the most thermally conductive metal. I think I remember seeing a video of someone putting an ice cube on a bar of silver and it melted faster because of it, conducting heat or whatever, quicker. Silver is also used in thousands of industrial uses, whereas gold has a lot fewer uses. Silver is also used in jewelry, just like gold. Although rich people typically save in gold and poor people save in silver, and so gold goes up more steadily, and silver does not go up as much or as steadily, because the poor don't have as much extra money to buy silver, and the poor are ignorant, and they don't buy precious metals, because after decades of propaganda, 60, 70 years of propaganda or whatever, people not buying precious metals for a long, long time, they broke us from that, from like 1930 something, like 34 or whatever, to 1970 something. People, who had precious metals continued to save them because they never turned them in when they were nationalized in the 30s, even though it was illegal to not turn it in. But it's the case that like, all the people who were born after that time, after the 1934 or whatever, all those people, they actually, grew up with their parents not buying gold or silver. They only had, or maybe were saving it, but they weren't buying more. And a lot of them, they grew up in this culture where, you couldn't even buy gold or silver. So, like a whole, like 2 generations, for those 40 years, 2 generations went by when nobody was buying gold or silver. And so it's a situation where, like, everybody forgot that gold and silver are money. And so then, like, hardly anybody now buys precious metals. Like, only 1 or 2% of Americans save in precious metals now. Right? If most people saved in silver, then the price would probably rise as reliably as gold's price does, because everybody would be using their savings every month to buy silver, right? But since they don't, silver's price is less reliable because there's not a whole lot of demand for it, at least not in terms of like, saving. Like there's big industrial demand, but not a huge amount of like, buying it because it's money and you want to save yourself from inflation. There's not a whole huge demand for that. I mean, the people who are silver bugs are big on it. They buy a lot of it. But like the people, they can buy as much. They might buy as much as they can, but most of them are middle class, so they can't afford a lot. But as far as like like rich people don't typically buy silver; they buy gold. But the future is still bright for silver, and silver's ratio to gold should be 10 to 1 because there's 10 times as much silver in the Earth's crust as there is gold, not 100 times as much. So it's way rarer than the price would indicate. You should only be able to buy 10 ounces of silver with 1 ounce of gold, because that's the ratio at which silver and gold exist in the Earth's crust. But since the silver to gold ratio, or whatever you call that ratio, is now 100 to 1, actually I think it's 102 to 1 last I checked a couple days ago, this means that silver is 1/10 the price that it should be, and this means that silver is bound to eventually go way up in price. It should be 10 times higher in price than it should be. It should be 10 times higher in price, going up from, 100 to 1 ratio to 10 to 1 ratio. And considering gold itself is heavily undervalued and should probably be between $5,000 to $10,000 per ounce, and these are not the words of me, these are the words of experts. Now, I've done some math and I agree that it should be way higher than that, actually. Although I don't know how to take all the Bitcoin and all the other cryptocurrencies into account. And nor do I know how, even less know how to account for those, considering they're going to be way bigger in the future, way more popular, cryptocurrency will be. So I don't know how to literally take that into account of what gold can or should be in the future, but definitely it's true that it should at least be 5 to 10,000 at least, gold should be an ounce. So this means that if silver returns to the price that its mining fundamentals indicate that it should be, that is mining in terms of like how much is in the Earth's crust, then silver will be $500 an ounce if gold goes up to $5,000 per ounce. And silver will be $1,000 an ounce if gold goes up to $10,000 an ounce. Imagine buying 1,000 ounces of silver at below $15 per ounce, and maybe you pay a little premium, so let's say it's $16 an ounce after the premium, right? Imagine buying 1,000 ounces of silver at even including the premium, it's only $16 an ounce. Right? And then imagine in like 40 years, silver having gone up to $1,000 an ounce. You'd make a killing. And that's in today's purchasing power dollars. Of course, this doesn't include inflation. This assumes no inflation. But, assuming inflation doesn't change the dynamics of what I'm talking about here. It doesn't change anything. It just changes the dollar price of the gold and silver. It doesn't change the fact that if gold increases significantly in purchasing power like it should, due to, maybe the government losing its ability to manipulate the price, or greater demand, or the dollar crashing, which it easily could. And if silver then returns to the price that it should be, which it easily could, that is 1/10 the price of gold instead of 1/100th the price of gold, then you will have enough money. If you have 1,000 ounces of silver, you'll have enough money to purchase a high-quality computer with just 1 or 2 ounces of silver, because of gold's purchasing power having gone up by 7 times, and because of silver having returned to being 1/10 the price of gold, and thus having gone up way more than 7 times in value. And so even if we have a hyperinflation, and it costs $10,000 to buy a couple of oranges because of the dollar being so worthless, you will still be able to buy a high-quality computer with just 1 to 2 ounces of silver. Even though the silver at that time, due to the hyperinflation, will be worth millions of dollars an ounce, and the gold at that time, due to the hyperinflation, will be worth probably tens of millions of dollars an ounce. What I'm trying to say is that the dollar price doesn't matter at all. The only thing that matters is the increase in purchasing power. That's the thing that matters. And the price of gold in relation to the purchasing power of the dollar should be way higher, and thus today should be $5,000 to $10,000 per ounce, meaning you should be able to buy way more with 1 ounce of gold today. And so once that rectifies, once that returns to what it should be, then you'll be able to buy way more with 1 ounce of gold. And if silver goes back to the ratio that it should be compared to gold, you'll be able to buy way, 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 way more with 1 ounce of gold. Regardless of what the dollar costs of things are, because of the dollar being worth more or less or whatever. I mean, it's always worth less, but whether it's worth a little less or whether it's worth way, 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 way less because of a hyperinflation, it doesn't even matter. The dollar price of gold and silver don't matter. The only thing that matters is the purchasing power, right? You can even have gold and silver go down in value and go up in purchasing power, go down in dollar terms, and go down in dollar price, and go up in purchasing power at the same time, because of everything else going down faster and further in dollar price. Like if the stock market falls by 80%, but the price of gold only falls by 40%, then this means that the gold has gone up in purchasing power, at least compared to stocks, right? So this is important to understand. So really, dollar price, whether gold goes up or down, dollar price doesn't matter at all. All that matters is what you can buy with that amount of gold and silver. And if, like I said, if silver returns in a few decades to being 1/10 the price of gold, and you can buy, 7 times as much with an ounce of gold in 40 years as you can buy today, that will mean you'll be able to buy almost as much at that time with 1 ounce of silver as you can buy today with 1 ounce of gold. And gold is $1,530 an ounce as of a couple of days ago, last I checked. And that's why I said that if gold and silver's prices both go up in 30 to 40 years, then you might very well be able to buy a high-quality computer with 1 to 2 ounces of silver. If gold goes up to the price that it should be based on the fundamentals of how much is in the Earth's crust, and if silver's price returns to the ratio with gold that the mining fundamentals indicate that it should be, right? Or sorry, earlier I was talking about when I meant fundamentals. Sorry, I said the wrong thing. Right, like based on the fundamentals, if like gold's fundamentals and silver's fundamentals go up due to them both being way rarer and way more useful to preserve purchasing power than most people realize these days. Like if everybody wakes up to the importance of sound money, the fundamentals have changed in a sense because like everybody has realized the true fundamentals, and then everybody starts buying them, and that increase in demand makes the price go way up. So the real fundamentals make the price go up, not to mention the fact they're diluting the market with all this extra silver that's eventually going to run out, and they're not going to be able to do that forever, and then the price will have to skyrocket. And the mining fundamentals, compared to gold, mean that silver is going to go up even if gold doesn't go up. Imagine being able to buy a brand new Apple laptop at the Apple Store for just 1 to 2 ounces of silver. And imagine having bought 1,000 ounces back when silver was less than $15 an ounce, and you got it even after the premium for just $16 an ounce. Imagine how much you'd be able to buy with that much silver if that's how much purchasing power silver had in the future. You could probably buy a couple houses with that much silver with 1,000 ounces, or maybe a small house for yourself and then a couple larger houses or duplexes to rent out to other people so you can make passive income. I mean, I myself don't believe in passive income. It's a form of slavery, but as long as it's a legal form of slavery that everybody does, and therefore passive income being legal is something that's being used against you by making you pay rent or other people, then it's important to use it in your favor by buying property and renting out those duplexes or apartments or houses to other people to live in so as to make passive income for yourself. If the only choice is between slave owner or slave, then it's better to be a slave owner. After all, you can always choose to be a humane slave owner who gives the slaves the choice to become slave owners themselves rather than slaves by joining the commune that you're living in or whatever, instead of just renting an apartment from the commune, right? And thus you incentivize the commune to grow, and you force everybody to be moral if they're going to be part of the commune. Thus you're forcing, a return to morality in societies. You incentivize everybody to join the commune in order to get, cheap, not have to rent anymore. But like I said, 1,000 ounces of silver might be enough in the future to buy a house. It might even be enough purchasing power to buy 2 or 3 houses, or maybe even 3 or 4, depending on how much silver goes up in purchasing power. But even if it takes 2,000 ounces of silver in 40 years to buy one house, or 40 to 60 years from now, let's say, you could buy a house at 2,000 ounces of silver. Well, then if you have 1,000 ounces that you bought for only $16,000 back in the year 2020, then you will have half the price of a house. And that's a lot of money in terms of purchasing power that you can use for other things. You could buy some land and then build your own housing structure on it for very cheaply. And then you could have a house for, less than 1,000 ounces of silver, right? Or something to live in for less than 1,000 ounces. You could buy one of those tiny houses that people are increasingly living in. You could pay half the cost of a house that you want and then take out a loan for the rest. And since you'd need to borrow less money from a bank, you would have to pay way less interest over the life of the loan, thus allowing you to save a lot of money. And if you already have a house and a child, then you could use that money to buy a house for your child or help your child out by loaning him or her the money so you don't permanently lose your money, but at the same time, you free your child from having to take out a loan from the bank. Right? And so that's a really, really important thing, freeing your children from having to be slaves to banks, right? And thus you save your child what would today be the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of dollars today over the life of a 30-year loan, right? Thus, by buying your child's house for him or her, or having him or her pay you back, you would be putting way more money in your child's hands, money which your child could then use to grow his or her wealth. Firstly, the child would use the lower mortgage payment to pay you back, but they'd be able to pay you back much quicker because of not having to pay interest to a bank. And after they were done paying you back, they would be able to start saving for themselves, especially since they would not have to pay any more payments to you, their father, once the house was all paid off. Then they would not be under the slavery of paying rent to some random person. They would own their house. And then neither would they be having to pay slavery to pay a lot of, neither would they be slaves to having to pay a lot of interest to a bank for decades. Being financially free at a much younger age would mean that your child would then be able to save more money and invest it, and then grow his or her wealth in a way that most young people in America these days are not able to. And I think that's about all I had to say today. This has been Redshift. Peace.